All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're just going to give it a minute more for more people to join in. We are seeing attendees starting to come in and settle down. So we'll just give it a minute more. In the meantime, a couple of housekeeping items. We're going to be recording this session and it will be uploaded to the HYCU partner portal along with the presentation and a few other resources for you. So if you have an account, you can easily access it, and if you don't, you can request to create an account on the HYCU partner portal. And for any questions that you have, feel free to use the Q&A section at the bottom. You can post all your questions and we'll try to address and answer all of them towards the end of the call. If by any chance we're not able to answer some of the questions, we'll follow up with you offline. Just give it probably 10, 15 more seconds and we can get started. Okay, I think we can get started. So thank you again for joining us today. We're very excited about this HYCU Partner Masters webinar, where we are discussing today the bridging the SaaS resilience gap in the legal industry. And thank you so much for your time, and we hope that this session will be insightful and valuable to you. So today we've got myself. My name is Ashish Rao. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager here. I work on a few solutions here, which are closely linked to the legal vertical. And with me today is Ben Topolsky, who is the VP of Global Alliances and Partnerships. All right, so a quick intro about HYCU for those of you who don't know much about us. HYCU is the #1 SaaS data protection platform with over 4,600 customers across 78 countries, and we've got 450 plus channel partners, and it is growing. And HYCU is a channel first company organization, so we really focus on trying to expand our channel ecosystem, trying to enable them, and ensuring that we work together and succeed together. All right, so to start off with, we have a short poll with about 3 questions. So you'll have about 15, 20 seconds to, sort of go through these questions and key in your answers. And once everything is keyed in, we'll take a quick look at the results. Probably another 10 seconds, and we should be able to see the results. These are pretty straightforward questions, but I hope we get some insightful results out of this. Okay, so we've got this. Which type of threat do we see most often? I think we've seen most of this happening, accidental deletions or any kind of human error. Ransomware, which is very, very valid in the case of the legal sector. Then we've got platform side incidents and third-party failures. Again, a significant threat to data today. All right, the second one, we've got what SaaS platforms do customers have a blind spot in, and I can see that I managed cloud and the IAM side of it, which is interesting, have about 31% each, and then we have M365, which again is a very, very critical workload, and then the likes of DocuSign and a few other ones as well. And lastly, we've got how do your customers handle recoverability today? I think the top answer is rely on native capabilities, okay? And then dedicated third-party backup solution, and unsure after that is they don't have a process in place. Perfect. I think it's great, quite insightful. And we'll sort of refer to, and of course, we will be discussing a lot of these topics throughout these sessions. So it sort of correlates and aligns with what our understanding is and what we've seen with customers and partners so far. All right, so to begin with, I want to discuss the changes that are happening in the IT and data landscape in the channel ecosystem. And we've typically seen three major changes happening, right? The first thing is hypervisor wars. We know in the recent past, with VMware, there have been so many changes from in terms of their offerings, licensing, and pricing, which has caused a lot of, you know, different reactions from all the different customers. Some of them are still sticking on to them. Some of them are looking to sort of migrate or change their provider. In that happening, people are moving to something like a Nutanix or some other hyper-converged infrastructure. And again, with the changing economics of lift and shift, a lot of the customers are actually also gradually moving to the cloud, and which effectively is sort of giving a push to the cloud economics. So a lot of the movement is happening from the hypervisor infrastructure to cloud and SaaS. And you can see some of these statistics here. First one is by 2028, cloud infrastructure offerings will account for 72% of the IT spending, which is a very significant amount of spend in the entire IT spending, which goes primarily towards cloud. And you can also see that by 28, again, the public cloud services market will reach a $1.26 trillion value, which is a massive scale at which, again, proves the point that organizations are going to and are moving to cloud, making, sort of focusing their spends on the cloud. And, with, that moving up to around $1.26 trillion, market. And with that, it's not just the cloud. With that, SaaS is exploding as well. And SaaS will account for 41% of the public cloud services, which again is a significant share in the entire public cloud services market. And the last one is a very, very astonishing number, a very surprising number, but this is based on research that on an average, mid-sized organizations are use 217 SaaS applications today, which I can understand is a little difficult to believe because it's a massive number, but it is true. It is the reality, and you can see that how easily and how easily organizations are able to sort of subscribe to new SaaS applications, as use them quickly, and which is why every organization has so many different SaaS applications across different departments, HR, finance, DMS, or so many different SaaS applications. Everything is moving from your on-prem infrastructure to different fragmented SaaS solutions on the cloud. Now let's look at the journey, how we sort of reached here and how this whole SaaS explosion, happened. So 20 years ago, everything was on-prem, right? Everything was in their little fortress. They controlled everything, their data, their applications. Customers had total control over everything and knew exactly what's happening, right? So all your applications, everything. But then gradually they started moving with, a little bit towards SaaS with some, flagship SaaS applications like Salesforce. On the cloud side of it, IaaS, AWS, sort of took the lead at that point. And customers slowly started moving their services on the cloud and on the SaaS while keeping majority on-prem. But then 5 years ago, that sort of further, got fragmented to more SaaS applications. So your Exchange, your SharePoint, they all went to the cloud from your on-premise infrastructure. And then there were BBaaS, PaaS applications, more IaaS platforms that customers relied on and made their on-prem part a little bit more thinner. Now, today, though, we've got, as I mentioned in the previous slide, an explosion in terms of these SaaS applications. So you can see that the on-prem part is fairly thin today. Of course, it'll remain because a lot of the critical applications and data will still be hosted on-prem. But you can see the number of SaaS applications that customers are using and the sort of options they have, and how easy it is to actually, just subscribe to a SaaS application in 5-10 minutes and actually get started, right? Just put in your credit card details and you can actually sign up for a new account on any SaaS platform. With that growth in DBaaS and PaaS and IaaS, so a lot of the movement over the last 20 years has been from on-prem to gradually moving to SaaS and cloud. And SaaS and cloud now take up the majority of the the data estate that customers manage today. And the same is applicable even in the legal sector. So you can see here that there has been a 60 to 75, from 60% to 75% in just about 3 years, an increase in the percentage of attorneys using cloud for work-related tasks in the US. So you can see typically the legal sectors, not in the forefront of sort of digitizing things and modernizing things, but right now, in 2024, you can see that 75% of attorneys use cloud, work-related cloud applications for their tasks. So which definitely shows that this particular movement, this shift, this trend is also applicable in the legal vertical. But with all of that, with SaaS applications being so easy to sort of start up and subscribe to, and the shift from your secure on-prem infrastructure to more cloud and SaaS, the data is also being fragmented, and with that convenience, the threat also is increasing, right? And it's true that it's no longer an if but a when, right? And you can see a lot of these examples are very specific to law firms across the globe, where it could be a human error, it could be a ransomware attack, as we saw. It's one of the top threats at a legal in the legal vertical, or it could be an insider action. It could be various different things, but it is happening across the globe, across very large organizations and very large firms, and the impact is significant, right? It could be in millions, and the average ransomware demand is 2.5 million today. So with the entire shift, with everything going to, moving to the SaaS side of things and the cloud side of things, we are seeing the threats significantly increasing and, rapidly increasing with that. Let's look at some of these threats. Of course, as we saw in the poll, we know exactly what sort of threats, legal vertical faces. But again, let's probably just sort of go through these and understand what the impact of each of this is and what the probability looks like. So in this particular slide, the way I've stack ranked it is by impact. So the first one is attacks like ransomware, right? Or any other cyber attacks. Now, the probability of this may or may not be very high. There are various ways in which organizations are protecting themselves from these kind of attacks. But in the case that something happens, the impact that it would have on an organization is very significant, right? From the inaccessibility of the entire data, or encryption of the entire data. The entire organization is not able to access any of their systems, their data, their applications, nothing. So the impact over there can be very, very significant. And again, on top of the operational disruptions that happen, it could also be ransom demands that the attackers can ask, which could again be in millions. So overall, the impact can be really high. The other one, which again is another high impact, is disasters and technical failures. What if the SaaS application is completely unavailable? What if there's some sort of a disaster due to which none of the data, none of the applications are sort of accessible, right? So all your data, let's say for an example, in a DMS, all of your data, all the data that the attorneys and all the members use is totally inaccessible, or even worse, got deleted. So that can be an organization-wide crisis, and the impact in these cases can be very significant. Then we have insider threats. Now, these can be, over a period of time, malicious bad actors internally deleting some sets of files or folders, and over a period of about 3 months, there's a massive gap in, there's a deletion or corruption or encryption of a large amount of data. So insider threats can happen in different scales, but could be localized, small issues, or it could actually be a little larger as well. So the impact can really vary, but typically we've seen the impact to be fairly significant. Then we also have third-party risk, and there's a data point here which we sort of came across in one of our recent research, was that 36% of the data breaches in 2024 was linked to a third-party vendor. So 36% is a significant number, and you can imagine that third-party risk happens quite often, and if it does, it can affect a large portion of the system. It could probably delete files, it could make the application inaccessible, or it could be any such impact. Then we have automation errors, things like scripts or any sort of automation that's being run on the application, on the files, on cleaning up data, whatever it is, right? And we've seen in a lot of our customer conversations and with partners as well, that a lot of these automations and these scripts have actually gone wrong if they're not tested, or if they're very old and something has changed, and it can definitely sort of delete a lot of files. It can leave a significant impact as well. Then we have human error, which I would say is one of the most common and most probable threat for every organization. And I believe that every organization at this point just accepts that human error can happen. It is a threat, and they just have to be prepared. They can try their best to, mitigate that, but it is at some point or the other, it is going to happen. But again, typically it's more localized. It could be misplacing a particular file, deleting something by mistake, or a folder, or maybe a bunch of files together. Of course, it can be larger issues as well, where a misconfiguration can lead to a larger issue on the system or with the data. But typically, we've seen human error to be fairly localized with few files and folders and a little bit of data. Lastly, we've got file corruption with something like maybe an iManage or a box. These things can happen where during a sync or while uploading versions or uploading something, the files are corrupted and now they're inaccessible. Right. So these are typically the threats that we see and we've seen in a lot of our conversations with customers and partners. Now, on top of that, what customers also need to keep in mind are the regulations. It could be something like a formal opinion, as an example here from American Bar Association, where it explicitly says that lawyers must ensure that the data is backed up and recoverable as and when required. Or it could be, region-specific regulations like NIS2, which is applicable in the EU for, even businesses that are catering to EU customers. It explicitly mentions that organizations are to implement business continuity such as backup management and disaster recovery. So these are all the things that customers typically need to keep in mind, especially in the legal vertical, because the data is so high value. Attackers, insider threats, they definitely know that this data is really high value, and which makes the entire vertical very vulnerable. And on top of it, of course, because it's such critical information that they carry with them. A lot of these regulations are specific to law firms or about how they have to manage and protect their data. Now let's look at what the consequences are, right? I mean, we saw what the threats are and what kind of impact they can cause, but let's look at what the actual consequences of data incidents could be on law firms. One of the most important things for any law firm across the globe is the reputation, right? So it's a very critical aspect, which, if damaged, can be a very can cause a very big damage for any law firm, right? They could lose customers. They could, customers would sort of shy away from signing up with them, working with them in the future as well. And if they lose any of that confidential customer data, or if they're not able to access it, it can actually hamper their reputation and their trust, which is the biggest impact for any organization in the legal sector. Then we have lost billable hours. It all works on billable hours in the legal vertical, right? So, I mean, even if a lawyer has to put in about 4 or 5 hours of additional manual effort to rebuild their files, it can mean thousands of dollars being wasted, because every single hour, as we all know, is very valuable for any law firm, right? Then we have regulatory penalties, GDPR, NIS2. There are so many regulations in every region which will require you to address these issues and mitigate them. So if you're not following it, and if some incident happens, penalties could be an additional uh, consequence or an impact on any customer. Then there are operational disruptions. Could be manual work in terms of rebuilding these files. The workflows are all over the place. It's not just the attorneys or the lawyers. It's just the rest. The entire organization could sort of be in a hiatus until the systems are restored, until the data is restored. And lastly, a loss of intellectual property. We all know, of course, that a lot of the work that these organizations do involves a lot of intellectual property, strategies, and so many different things that are very valuable. So if you lose them, you're going to actually lose a lot of value in terms of the IP that's built over a period of time. But all of this, now that we've seen the impact and all these threats, this is what is essentially driving enterprises to actually prioritize backup of SaaS applications. And as you can see from the stat here, by 2028, Gartner predicts that 75% of the enterprises will prioritize SaaS backup, compared to 15% in 24. So just in 4 years, organizations are realizing that yes, our data is scattered all over the place. It's on the cloud. We don't have as much control as we had previously, and we need to start backing it up because incidents can happen. It is happening across the globe, across organizations, and across verticals. But in the legal vertical, there are still a lot of customers that do not realize yet that the data that customers are responsible for their data on the cloud and on SaaS. And we had another interesting data point in a recent research where 85% of the IT decision makers in the legal sector still believe that native SaaS platforms provide full data protection. So I think it also relates with the one of the one of the poll questions where we saw that customers are still relying on native capabilities, which which definitely exists and which we'll discuss in the next slide, but is limited to certain areas. They cannot qualify as a through and through backup and recovery solution. You know, so let's look at what these native capabilities look like and what the limitations of those are. So the first one is a lot of the applications like iManage and Box, they have the trash bins or recycle bins, which effectively store your deleted files or documents, folders, and users onto the trash bin. But the one of the most important things to remember here is trash bins are always temporary. There's a certain duration up till when they will retain that data, after which, once it's permanently deleted, it is gone forever, right? You cannot in any way retrieve that data again. So it's a very limited, sort of capability in terms of the duration. Then we have versioning in some of the applications where if the data changes or if gets corrupted, encrypted, you can roll back to other versions. But again, this is not applicable. This is not available across all the platforms. And if the file is deleted, versioning will really not help you at all. Then we have things like journaling, audit logs, which essentially just records all sort of activity and file access and whatever changes that are being made. But again, that is a very, very manual process. If a bunch of files or folders have been deleted, it's going to take a long time to actually rebuild things using this sort of information. Then we have soft delete, which again sort of correlates with the whole recycle bin concept. It's very short-lived, typically about 30 days, where things like your users, maybe on your IAMs, you would have these kind of soft deletes, which will retain your users, groups, and objects, and anything that's deleted for about 30 days from where you can recover it back. But beyond the 30 days, again, that information is completely gone. Then we have some basic retention policies that a few applications or platforms offer. Again, it's not really very easy to manage, and it's very difficult to sort of manage it at scale, all the retention policies, right? And lastly, we've got the export and restore tools, which are basically, it could be built on scripts, or it could be a lot of manual exporting and importing with lack of automation to it, and not typically a backup and recovery solution per se. And in most of these solutions, you won't be able to sort of recover data granularly. So you usually do it in bulk and you export in bulk, which may not really help in situations of crisis or in situations where you need some certain information immediately, which is lost or deleted, and you have to import or export a bunch of your data. So with that, I'm going to pass on the mic to Ben, and he's going to take us further from here. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks a lot, Ashish, and thanks for sharing some of these reasons why the legal firms should be backing up their SaaS data and the potential impacts to their business. Now, what I'd like to do is kind of go through how partners on the call can collaborate with HYCU to bring data protection to their legal customers. So as you see this graphic here, we are here to talk about our cloud platform, and it really covers 4 core areas for your customers. First is this total visibility piece, right? So through a technology and a feature that we call rGraph, we allow you and your customers to really visualize and understand all the different data sources that they have inside of their environment. If you cannot really understand what you have running, in a lot of situations, you might view you have like 10, 15, 20 different applications running, but in reality, I think we had a graphic here earlier, an average size company has over 200 SaaS apps running in their environment. So this really is first identifying where your risk is through this visibility piece that we call rGraph. Next is now that we understand and your customers start to understand exactly what they have running, where they have the most risk for business important and critical data, it's now backing it up and protecting it and creating a consistent process to do that. Next, after we have the process to consistent and automate that backup process, it's really providing the ability for them through directly themselves or through services through your companies to allow them to automate that recovery process. And it can be done in a kind of granular fashion, just some smaller pieces, or it could be in a more disaster recovery kind of synopsis or activity where you're recovering the entire environment, but you want to be able to provide them the ability to recover in whatever fashion is required. And the last piece here is total freedom, right? And so, with the way that HYCU works is the customer brings the storage and typically can export that data outside of the actual service that they are using, the SaaS service. So for example, if there is a broad outage and you might be using something like an iManage Box or some other services, we can export that data outside to have some business continuity and even help them in some situations, depending on the solutions they're using, kind of help them move that data across different ecosystems if we are talking about cloud itself. The last thing we want to hit on here is that there really is nobody that has the amount of coverage that we have in this space, right? So if you look at the number of services that we're covering across infrastructure, hybrid, multi-cloud, SaaS, and so AIML workloads, excuse me, there's really nobody who's anywhere close to the number of services that are being covered. And is, again, additional value because you've got a single way and a single approach to do this across dozens of different services. Let's go to the next slide, Ashish. Yeah. So first is, how are customers securing the backup management for legal stock, right? So again, we hit on some of this, right? So the customer has complete data ownership, right? And so we really have a really, important philosophy here is, that the data is best managed by the customer in their hands, right? And so, whatever we're doing to back up that data, it's going to go directly from that third-party service, whether it's SaaS or infrastructure or database as a service, a hybrid cloud. It's going to go directly to the customer's own storage, or in situations where you're a managed service provider, you're going to manage that data on their behalf, and but it's always in your control or the customer's control, and not in HYCU's control. Next, it's around immutability, right? So if there is an attack, how do you make sure that the data is protected from the ransomware actor or the cyber actor, right? And so, by aligning with immutability, which is, in essence, you cannot delete the data, right? It's write once, read many times. It locks that from being deleted for a certain period of time. Then even if there is, penetration and they get access to something, they can't delete it, and so you can still recover it, right? So it's a key component that we provide through something we call our Shield. Next, again, I hit on this briefly earlier. It's, you can do quick granular recovery across all these different verticals, solution sets across the legal tech stack, right? So whether you're talking iManage, Microsoft M365, DocuSign, Box, Entra, Okta, a couple other different services, it could be a full recovery or granular recovery depending on the use case that we are working on. And then finally, it's all about automation, right? So you can take a consistent approach across all these SaaS services, right? So you can set up a single policy, for example, in our platform, and the customer can set this up. And it's truly a set and forget motion, right? So you create that policy, assign it to that SaaS service, and it truly just automates everything going forward. We'll provide you reporting. You don't have to worry about manual exporting. You don't have to worry about scripts. It's a set and forget motion, and you can trust that it's going to be backed up on a daily basis. So if we look at, again, a couple different things and how we're approaching this, again, backups on autopilot, right? So we hit on this, right? It's automating it. It runs 24/7. It truly is set and forget. The one-click recovery. So you go to the restore function of that particular service, and you just identify that restore point. Was it yesterday? Was it a week ago? Whatever that restore point is based on the type of incident that you're trying to recover from, it is easy to go in and recover that data in a one-click fashion. The next is, again, something we talked about briefly earlier is, again, the ability to export a lot of this data off-site in case, the entire service is down, or there could be additional other use cases that you might want to leverage this off-site export capability. So instead of, for example, recovering into the SaaS service, it is recovering it off-site into an S3 compatible bucket. And you can do anything you want with that data, whether it is sharing it with the end user so they can continue on with the business, or some other use cases if applicable. Again, so these offsite backups, so you're in control of that backup, right? So if you think of the old kind of philosophy around backup, it's 3, 2, 1, right? That last one of that one is offsite backup, right? So, a lot of these vendors and all these vendors are doing some level of backup as a consistent fashion across their entire SaaS service, right? And so they can bring up the entire SaaS service if it goes back down. But this again goes back into, the end customer is ultimately responsible for their particular data set within that overall SaaS service, right? So them having control of the data and securing it offsite helps them, be in more control of any type of incident, and help them comply with different regulations, right? I think we saw something from the Bar Association. Again, you should have a copy of the data in your own hands that is recoverable, especially with such important data as legal data. And then again, this is going back to that ransomware protection. I said 3, 2, 1. There's actually another kind of component to that 3, 2, 1, 1, and that last one, kind of it's one backup offsite, and then making sure that it is immutable, it is undeletable in essence, right? And so again, you want to make sure that in the case of a ransomware event in which someone's trying to, in essence, take the data from you, encrypt it, and make you pay to get that access back, you can be confident that even if they somehow got access to the data and they were able to pull that data, it was not deletable. So you can still recover it, and then you can kind of mitigate the other kind of issue of that data being taken away. So here, again, we're providing SaaS with sovereignty, right? So again, you think about all this data is still your responsibility. It's providing customers access to their data no matter what, right? And so, with HYCU, we have multiple different data sources, or sorry, storage targets that you can leverage across the public cloud and on-prem, right? So you see some different use cases here, or different storage target types, whether it's something like an Amazon Web Services S3, Dell DDBE, whether it's data domain on-prem or in the cloud, services like Owasabi, Nutanix NUS. And so we support multiple different data types, again, allowing customers to be confident that, if they're using different storage backup for different backup capabilities, that we're going to be able to support that. Again, so it's customer brings their own data. We can get advanced deduplication. So I mentioned, Dell DDBE. Again, so you can get even more cost efficiencies, right, through their deduplication processes. Again, we can intelligently schedule based on, backup windows, right? So say you want to, only back up during a certain period of time, we can absolutely support that. Everything is very flexible. Again, we hit on ransomware protection again. So again, this is an overarching theme, right? Again, immutability, immutability, immutability. Like everything that we do is really to make sure that the customer gets access to this data and it's not removed and taken out of their hands. And then it's fast onboarding, right? This is a SaaS service, right? So, we are managing the infrastructure as it gets spun up and spun down to do those backups through our SaaS capabilities. So once this is set up and configured with your support in some situations, the customer can be confident that they don't have to worry about upgrading anything, running agents or anything like that. It truly is a 100% automated SaaS infrastructure. Well, this gives you a little bit of kind of a high-level architecture of how HYCU really works. Again, we have a backup that runs inside of the customer's tenancy, and it's talking directly to the end SaaS service, right? And so whether that's iManage, M365, DocuSign, or the dozens of other SaaS services and PaaS services that we support. It's talking directly from within the customer's tenancy, and then it goes in directly into the customer's owned storage, right? And then if you add that last piece on it with our lock inside of our shield, again, we're leveraging the true immutability and making sure that if something does somehow happen, and they can figure out that this is even a backup, which is hard to determine through our technology, that they still can't delete that data, so you can still recover it. Some other key components here is, we do have encryption of data in transit and at rest, again, so customers can be confident that the data is not readable. You can configure, and customers can configure multiple copies, right? So we talked a couple times, again, that 3-2-1 strategy. In some situations, they're only using one backup for SaaS, but if they require it, they can have multiple copies, right? Our platform is flexible enough to support that. We do have single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, role-based access controls, right? So they can define who has access to what parts of our platform, and you can help them configure that, right? So you can have somebody who just is responsible for scheduling the backups, but can't actually do the recovery for whatever reasons. And so it's a very, again, powerful platform, and it abides by standard security principles. And again, safe ransomware proof, our lock copies, again, something we've reiterated multiple times. So let's just keep in mind, SaaS is an emerging opportunity for the IT channel, right? So they are going to continue to grow and use these services, right? And so a lot of times I hear, again, I've been in this industry for quite a bit of time, SaaS is cloud for many of these customers, right? And cloud is where everybody is going and growing. And so, with the HYCU platform, just keep in mind that, as customers, first dip their toe in the water and maybe get onto iManage, maybe M365, they're going to start to look and expand into other services, whether it's Salesforce, whether it's Notion, Asana. And so, with HYCU, you can get that initial, presence through, again, backing up some of the key legal apps. But as they expand outside of it into, other apps that are, on the periphery, and you can also work with HYCU to sell those inside of the organization, and grow your share of wallet inside the account, and not just a share of wallet, the trust. Right, because ultimately you work with your customers to provide a trusting relationship and making sure that they've got the right understanding of what they need to protect. And through that thing we talked about earlier, the visibility with our graph, you can help them identify where those risks are across their legal apps, and maybe some of the things like their CRM and their identity access management. So where do you want to start first? So if this is a little bit of I think of like a periodic table for elements, and we look at this from like a SaaS and backup perspective. Again, where we're really talking here is this collaboration space, right? So that's where we would lean in first, right? iManage, Box, M365. These are the core services that we know pretty much every legal entity are using, right? But from there, again, it's let's get that first kind of land and expand opportunity through the core applications and core data sets that are important to them from a collaboration perspective, and then you can kind of move outwards from there, whether it's identity access management, right? So I think that's kind of the next area of expertise for them, or a kind of area of kind of risk for them, is making sure that like their Entra ID or Okta is backed up. And then you can move on further from there, whether it's their Salesforce data, their Asana data, and other data components that they're going to be leveraging. And as they become more mature, maybe they are starting to run more infrastructure inside of the cloud, like an Amazon or Google or Microsoft. Since a lot of these are legal vendors, they are probably very tightly aligned with Azure. You can expand into there, and again, in some of these situations, they are already running some stuff on-prem within a Nutanix or VMware environment. We also support those as well. So how do you get started today, right? So, for those of you who are newer partners, we do have a partner portal, and we have a QR code here that you can select and request access to if you do not already have access. We also have built out more recently product tours, which are very powerful and provide customers really a good understanding of what our capabilities are across these core solution sets. We do have the ability, by the way, to work with you to enable these product tours to be delivered on your website as well. So, if there is interest, reach out to your channel account manager or myself if you're working directly with me, and we can get you set up to deliver and offer the product tours yourselves. And then from an MDF request, if as you become a more mature partner of HYCU and you're looking to do joint campaigns with us and look for market development funds, here is a QR code that you can put requests in for that as well. So with that, let's go ahead and I will go ahead and open up our Q&A and see if there's any questions that have been asked. If there aren't any questions that have been asked, definitely you can now put in, any type of questions that you might have today for this session. And we'll give it a pause here to see if there's any questions that do come in. So one question I do hear very often is, it kind of goes back to the slide that Ashish had around, are there capabilities natively in some of these platforms? And as Ashish really highlighted earlier, there are some general basic capabilities, right? And so we do know, again, these vendors are doing pretty robust backups to make sure that if the entire system falls down, they can bring it back up, hopefully in a very quickly fashion, and recover everybody's data based on their latest recovery point. And they do try to provide some level of minimizing of errors, through whether they're trash bins, recycle bins. But as she's highlighted, it is very temporary, right? And so this is the one thing that we don't want to scare people, but we want to just make sure that they're aware, right? That once that data is deleted from those trash bins or recycle bins, right, it is gone forever. It's not able to be recovered. And in many situations, what would happen is that's the first attack vector for a malicious actor, right? Because they understand that. They're going to go in and try to get access and delete the data from that trash bin. So that is like one key area that as you talk to customers and make sure that they're aware, that is a very temporary situation. And it's not really for backup, by the way, right? That's just to kind of say, well, if you delete something, let's give you some time just to make sure that you purposely deleted it. It's almost kind of like a versioning type of thing. But once it's deleted, it's gone. And that goes back to versions as well. A version is only good until the file is completely deleted and gone, right? And once that file is completely deleted and gone, it's gone forever again. So you move a file to a trash bin, doesn't matter how many versions, that file is no longer in existence in the system. And then as soon as it's gone from that trash bin, it's gone forever, right? So those are like the key things that we typically hear about. As why is there an importance to back up this data? It's because, again, most of the companies are thinking more of it's a multi-tenant solution, so they're going to recover for everybody. And then the native tools are typically very temporary in status. Okay, well, we'll give pause for one more opportunity for people to ask any additional questions. Don't see any additional questions, so we can go ahead and wrap it up. We do really appreciate everybody who shared their time with us today. If there are any questions, you can reach out to your, again, channel account manager, or if you're working with directly with either myself or Ashish, you can directly reach out to us. We will answer any type of questions that you have post session. Definitely really look forward to working with everyone going forward, and appreciate everyone's time today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.